Life in Jarabacoa is relational. Life in Jarabacoa is intentional. Life in Jarabacoa is very green. Life in Jarabacoa is warm. Life in Jarabacoa is an adventure. Life in Jarabacoa is stretching. My name is Esther Ploon, and I have lived here for the past year and a half. So I live in an apartment, a little bit outside of town, but really close within walking distance of the school. I live with 3 other girls, and we have a really cozy house. It's become one of my favorite spaces here for sure. But we have a really cool upstairs porch area where we have a lot of plants and greenery, and it's become a really cozy place to curl up with a cup of tea and some candles and read a book. And my roommates are really awesome too, so they've made it a super good place to be. I live in a really great neighborhood. I would say it's very safe. There's not a lot of people coming in and out, which is nice. It's for the most part pretty quiet. We live kind of near a busy road, so there's kind of some traffic noises, but it's kind of nice sometimes too to have that. As a single woman, I've felt safe for the most part while walking around town. Definitely within my apartment complex. We live in a gated community, so that's really helpful. But definitely there's just a part that you have to be wise. Just walking on the streets and just being aware of your surroundings is really important. But I've never felt at risk or like at very high imminent danger or threat, which is super great because I definitely had that fear coming into moving here. I was also really worried about food and just access to food, what I would eat. And that's something that's been so much easier than I expected it to be. My roommates and I usually go grocery shopping about once a week. And we usually do like a big grocery haul. So we get like vegetables, rice, fruits, all sorts of stuff. And then we all take turns cooking one night a week, which is fun because we get to try out a lot of different recipes. And yeah, for the most part, everything that I've ever wanted to find is able to be found. Sometimes there's not Skittles, so I will just preface with that. But sometimes they do get imported, and that's really great. It feels like Christmas every time there's Skittles, so that's a really good thing. There are a few grocery stores down in the town that I usually go to. One is called El Cofre, and then one is called Supermercado Jarabacoa. Those are 2 that I use. And then there's a few other little ones, like little colmados or street stores that just sell chips and just like more basic like pantry items that make it easy to pop in and out of those as well. Yeah, the grocery stores here are definitely on the smaller side comparatively to stateside, but they have a lot of variety, lots of pantry items, lots of pretty much anything that you would want to find. The produce sometimes is a little bit hit or miss, and there's only a few places in town where I like to buy meat, but other than that, there's never been anything that I can't find, or there's always a variation of it that you can kind of make it work for what you're cooking. When it comes to finding day-to-day things, I brought a lot with me, but also due to Amazon and just the stores that we do have in town, everything has been really easy and accessible to get to me or to find here. And if I can't find it, someone typically knows where I can. So I have never felt like I'm missing anything or like I wanted to find something that I wasn't able to find. And Amazon delivers within 2 weeks, so it makes it very easy to get things that I need. There's a lot of really cool restaurants in town. There's one called El Fresco, which is probably one of my favorites. They have really, really good Dominican food and also just like home-cooked, home food that tastes really good, like burgers and stuff. There are a lot of different choices. There's a Chinese restaurant I know that some people have talked about before. Lots of like a barbecue restaurant that's really good. Most restaurants you can find like a mix of like classic Dominican food items like mango or things like that, and then also hamburgers and fried chicken and things of that nature. So there's definitely a lot of variation, and when you're craving like a good waffle or a good brownie or a good burger, there are places you can go, so you'll never feel alone in that. Traffic and transportation in Jarabacoa is crazy. Definitely probably one of the biggest things that I had to adjust to when I first moved here. But I definitely have learned a lot, such as pedestrians don't have the right of way here. So if you're crossing the street and you expect people to stop for you, they won't. So you kind of just have to dodge a little bit in and out of traffic, but you learn that as you go, which is fun. There's a lot of little motos, which are kind of a mix of a moped and a motorcycle, maybe. So those fill up a lot of space on the streets, and there are cars as well, not as many. I would say there's more motos than cars, possibly, but yeah, but it's definitely a busy town, lots of noise, lots of hustle and bustle all the time. I've never felt unsafe or in danger walking on the streets or within traffic, just obviously being aware of your surroundings and making sure you're checking both ways before you go, or even when you're driving. You kind of just have to put yourself out there more than in the States. You just kind of have to hope that nobody hits you, and nobody ever does, so it works out well. But definitely a lot of bravery needed to drive down these streets. When I first moved here, I just walked everywhere and would use like a taxi service if I needed to go farther, or if it was raining and I didn't want to walk with groceries home from the rain or something like that. But I actually purchased a moto from a previous missionary, so I get around on that. And my roommates own a car, so we get to use that as well, which is really nice. Moto conchos are another really great part of transportation in Jarabacoa. They're little taxis, but a moto, like a motorcycle taxi. They're very cheap, very safe for the most part. But I got to know a couple like really good moto taxi guys who would drive me around occasionally if I was running late to work. And that was good to have their number on hand, so if it was raining or I was running really late, could hop on a ride with them too, which was really good. After living here for a year and a half, the transportation feels a lot more easy to understand, easy to navigate, not as overwhelming. Driving still gets me a little bit. I find that I have way more road rage here than I do in the States. But I think just being aware of your surroundings is good, and I've learned a lot about defensive driving living here. So my role at Doulos is on the intervention team, so we get to do a lot of different things, including reading intervention, which is pulling out kids one-on-one and reading a passage with them every day in English. And then we get to see them be able to read faster, and their skills and growth in comprehension grow almost on a daily basis, which is really cool to see. And we also do something called Equipping Minds in the morning and pullouts during the afternoon, which is games, like little card games that are cognitive therapy games that help rewire and reconnect parts of the brain with hand-eye coordination, and can also help with different diagnoses. A normal day for me looks like waking up around 6. I usually do a little bit of a Bible study in the morning, and then my roommates and I meet downstairs typically and do a little prayer together before we all head off to school, which is a really good time of just kind of recentering before heading off into a busy work day. Once I get to school, I always start off with a cup of coffee, 100%. And after that, kind of just go to the first Equipping Mind session of the day. So I get to shuffle cards and kind of connect with kids when they're first walking into school. And then from there, my day looks just like a lot of kind of stepping into different classrooms all the way from ages pre-K3 all the way up to 9th grade, even sometimes higher than 9th grade. And working with reading intervention and the cognitive therapy games that I mentioned as well. The team at Doulos feels like a community that I've never really had or experienced before. It's really special in a lot of ways. I think there's just a special bondedness that we all share because we're all sharing different cultural experiences and just coming from different places and being together. And obviously being unified in Christ is a huge one too. But the community is super solid. We do a lot of really fun things outside of school, like worship nights, game nights, and stuff like that. But within Doulos, it feels like a place where you can be yourself, where you can be honest about how you're doing, ups and downs of life, ups and downs of culture stress. It feels like a place where people have your back and know you and care deeply for you. And it's a very silly place too. People are really goofy and they make you laugh a lot, and so the community is super great. The students at Doulos are so fun, very hilarious. They're really wise. They try to find the answers to really big questions, and they care a lot about you. They will probably hug you at least 50 times a day if you let them. And they love to make you laugh. They love to joke around with you. They love to make secret handshakes with you. They're really, really fun kids, and it's been really fun to get to like walk with them these few years and get to do life alongside them. Lunch at Doulos, we have a cafeteria, which makes it really easy. If you don't pack a lunch, there's always some sort of meat, rice, salad of some sort. And then on Fridays, we always get special food like chicken tenders or hamburgers or something like that, which is fun. So occasionally I'll do that. More often than not, I'll probably order from the cafe. And then sometimes we'll have leftovers from dinner that my roommates and I cook, so I'll bring that. If I'm feeling especially motivated, sometimes I'll make a lunch in the morning. That doesn't happen very often. But there's a lot of options. Even nearby campus, there's a place for smoothies that I like to walk to sometimes. And that makes it simple. If you forget a lunch or don't have time or don't want to eat the cafeteria lunch, there's a lot of options around that make it easy to do that. At the end of the work day, I typically help with dismissal, which is just saying goodbye to the students in the front Commodore area. So kind of just sending them off back home. Usually a lot of games are played, or just like rock, paper, scissors and stuff like that as they're getting ready for their parents to pick them up. And then the last hour of the school day is usually just prep time. Me and my teammates will print what we need for the next day or work on getting things entered in. We do a lot of data tracking, so we'll get those things entered in the system, and then just a lot of community time towards the end of the day, and then come home. And after school usually just looks like hanging out with my roommates or hanging out with friends. Lots of chill time, reading a book, maybe listening to music, watching a TV show or something like that, and then cooking dinner and do it all again the next day. Outside of school time, on the weekends we do a lot of game nights. We like to sit down and play games a lot together. A few of my friends and I have started doing worship nights a little bit last semester, which was really cool. And that's just a good time to gather together to pray and just worship and kind of refocus on the Lord in those moments, especially when you're feeling depleted or just missing home a lot. Those are really good things to do. One thing I like to do with people here as well is to go and visit some of the waterfalls that are in Jarabacoa. There's a lot of them that are within walking distance, or if you can take a moto or some sort of taxi transportation and then walk down. They're so beautiful, covered by trees. There's mountains everywhere. And just the sound of a waterfall just brings me a lot of peace. So I go there when I can, not as often as I would like, but it's a really beautiful thing to do, fun to do with people. You can take a little swim, and it's a good thing to fill your time. There's a lot of really cool things to see in this country. It's beautiful, and so we'll try to explore as much as we can if we have some extra time on a long weekend. Restaurant and get dinner, and bring a card game or something and play games there. But for the most part, just kind of hanging out and home and laughing a lot. In the States, I have my family and then a huge social network of people from church and school and college, and just a bunch of people that have been super supportive of my transition down here. I talk with my parents almost every day, probably. Definitely with my mom almost every day, and either through texting or a quick voice message or a phone call. But it makes it super easy to be accessible with family down here because of technology, and FaceTime is a huge plus, a huge helper. So I FaceTime with them a lot and get to talk to my brother and hear his fun stories about what he's up to in the cold, snowy Michigan. And in general, when it comes to seeing each other in person, I usually go home about 2 times a year around Christmas time and summertime, and then my parents, if they're able to, will come once or twice a year as well. So within a year, I probably get to see them 4 times. My spiritual community here in the DR is primarily with people from Doulos, which is cool to be able to do life with them in those aspects of spiritually and also work life with them. And then outside of that, I do attend a church on Sundays with my roommates, and that is a church plant that started maybe a year or 2 years ago. My church down here in the Dominican Republic is a multicultural community. We have a lot of North American, Haitian, and Dominican people who attend our church, and that makes it really fun. We get to sing in both English and Spanish. Our sermons kind of rotate, going back and forth from English and Spanish, and very mixed in terms of young families and older people, and it's a really great community, super solid. A few other things outside of church that I get to be a part of that build my faith are my roommates and I, along with a couple other families in our community, do like a weekly lunch/Bible study, we're working through a Bible study called Gospel Basics, which is kind of just going through what is the gospel and how do you share it. So that's something that we get to study together and learn together. And I'm also in a book study with a few other staff members from Doulos that talks about just practicing the way of living like Jesus and loving people like he did. So those are two other ways that I get to grow in my faith here at the Doulos. The faith community here feels really unique because you're doing life so closely with a lot of people at work and then also at church and then also maybe you live with them. So people are really seeing your full self in a lot of ways, which is really beautiful. And it also allows for a lot more challenging conversation, deeper discussion about who God is and how he's moved in your life. And just makes the community a lot more richer for that because you know that people have your back. You can go to people and ask for prayer. People will support you and come around you in all manners of ways, but especially spiritually, you know that you're not alone in the transition of moving and just having people who are praying for you and know you deeply.